Hey, this is Leo for Actualized.org. And what I've been thinking about right now is I've been thinking about how to really articulate what Actualized.org is about and kind of what it is that we're doing here and how it's a little bit different than other personal development sources that are out there, from books to seminars to CDs to other websites and blogs on this topic of personal development. And what I've been really thinking about is how do I really articulate it? What is it that I mean by personal development, and why am I so excited about it? And what is it that I want from you? And one thing that I know that I definitely want from you is I want the same excitement in your life about personal development that I have. And I'm trying to figure out how to communicate this. And I had this idea. And the idea I had is that I remember a long time ago, when I was a teenager, I really used to be into remote control cars, remote control vehicles, and remote control helicopters. I really loved helicopters, and I used to own a big gas helicopter at one point. I owned some electric helicopters. I never got really good at them, but it was just such a damn expensive hobby at the time that I just thought about that. And I remember looking and seeing videos online about really good RC helicopter pilots and the kind of crazy stuff that they were able to do. Like, you can actually probably go right now and search on YouTube or on Google for some like RC helicopter stunt flying and some of the crazy stuff that they're able to do. Literally, you can see a video of like a 14-year-old kid who takes this little remote control helicopter, and it's not even one of those big expensive ones, it's like a little electric one. And you see him doing the most ridiculous, insane things. Like, you can't even imagine the kind of things that this guy's able to do. He's able to do backflips. He's able to fly it upside down, in reverse, like through the wind, spirals, just like all sorts of stuff, like really low to the ground, high up in the air. It's just nuts. And I thought about that, and I wondered, that was really cool. And even though I didn't ever get even close to that level, the reason I thought about that was because that's kind of what I want for you with personal development. And I also was thinking about, what are the different facets of personal development, and what specifically do I even mean by that word? Because it tends to be pretty abstract, and I think it tends to lose its meaning when I use it. So, I want to distinguish it from, for example, learning how to do nutrition, and I want to distinguish it from learning how to do fitness, like fitness exercises. And I was thinking about all these ideas, and what I came up with was this idea that personal development is really about learning how to master yourself. So it's a process of self-mastery, and it's mastering your own psychology, and it's understanding how your brain functions and how to get the best performance out of your brain, and then your body, and then your life, right? It's how to create an awesome life, but ultimately what I find that boils down to, and what personal development is for me, is about understanding your own psychology. Because the reason that you're not having that awesome life, the reason that you're not getting the success in life that you want, and then this bubbles out into all sorts of other areas. It can bubble out into nutrition and fitness and everything else, and relationships. But ultimately, the reason you're having problems there is because you're not understanding your own psychology. You don't have the facility and the control of your own psychology that you need to get those things in place. And what I equated that to, and I created this analogy in my mind, is I'm like, it's almost like me learning how to fly a helicopter, right? When I first started flying a helicopter, for me, it was challenging just to get the thing to hover and lift up off the ground. Why? Because actually, if you've ever tried flying a remote control helicopter, those things are pretty difficult to learn to fly. And it's really costly when you make a mistake. At least it was maybe 10 years ago. Nowadays, I see them selling little very flimsy RC helicopters for like $50, and you can practice with those really easy. But when your helicopter costs $100, and it costs or $1,000 rather, and when it costs $100 just to replace one blade, if you broke that, and that blade broke if it basically touched anything, whether it touched the ground or touched a tree or anything, furniture in your house, then it basically broke. So it was really hard to learn to fly. And I remember just spending hours and hours just like lifting the helicopter just a few feet off the ground, just up and down and up and down. And even there, I managed to break blades. and how challenging that was. And it was almost like, I was learning this machine, this complicated machine, and I wanted to be able to do some of those advanced maneuvers like flying upside down and doing these cartwheels and all this cool stuff. But I was having difficulty just flying the thing straight and keeping it steady and not crashing into things. And I think that's really what our condition is in life, is that we're born with this incredible body, and we're born with this incredible brain. By estimates from neuroscientists right now, the brain is the most complex organism / machine that we know in the universe. And of course, we don't know, we haven't explored too many planets, so that's a pretty advanced statement to make. But it is the most complex thing that we know of on Earth. And it's really fascinating because you've got hundreds of billions of neurons in there, all interconnected, all working. And then, of course, you've got layers and layers of operating system and different instincts and emotions and logic and all this stuff that evolved over millions of years. And we've got this software in our brain. And now we're here, we're trying to live our everyday lives, and we're trying to accomplish certain things with our lives, whether it's to build a business, to have a lot of money, to have time to travel, or to build an awesome family life, whatever it might be. You're trying to build those things, but ultimately you're doing it through the machinery that you've got. And what do you really have? You have this body, you've got this brain, and you're trying to figure out how to use these tools that you just kind of ended up having, being born with them, and you end up kind of just on your own trying to figure out how it works. I forget what book it was, but somewhere in some personal development book, somebody talked about the fact that you're born with this brain and you're born as a human being without an instruction manual. And I thought, that's a really good analogy. It's kind of like trying to learn a helicopter, right? And you don't really know how, you don't have an instruction manual. And so you have to just kind of figure it out on your own. You're just like going by touch and go and by instinct. And you're doing a lot of experimentation, and you're using the process of trial and error to learn how it works. And that's what I found basically I've been doing in my life up to this point, is doing a lot of trial and error, a lot of error, figuring out how to get my finances up in order, how to get my nutrition handled, how to get the kind of exciting life that I want, how to get the fulfillment in life that I just intuitively know I can get, but I haven't been able to tap into yet. So for me, that's been kind of the driving force, is just knowing that I think there's something big out there that's possible, that awesome kind of life where I feel super excited and engaged all the time. And I'm just now starting to tap into that with all the stuff that I've been learning and implementing. And so if we make this analogy between you learning how to use your brain and your body and somebody learning to use and to fly a remote control helicopter, I think that is what I talk about with personal development. And I think the biggest bottleneck for us as humans is learning how to get the results that we want, and how to get the fulfillment that we want is learning our own psychology. Because when we're born, we don't get an instruction manual. And even though modern society is really good about teaching us mathematics, and is good about teaching us language, and is good about teaching us history and science and all these cool subjects that we learn in school, in the end, I feel like we're really lacking right now in an education in psychology. And not the psychology that you learn in psychology, like freshman college courses in psychology, like Psychology 101, but I mean practical psychology, psychology that you can apply in the real world, like the psychology of what it takes to manage a good relationship, the psychology involved in managing an intimate relationship, the psychology involved with raising kids and being a parent, the psychology involved with running a business and being a leader, the psychology involved with making yourself happy, not stressing yourself out, having a nice balance between work and play in your life. And then the psychology of managing your money, and the psychology of communicating with other people and convincing them of your ideas, being able to do that. And then, of course, just the psychology of managing your own thoughts and expectations and moods and feelings. That's also really big. And so I feel like this psychology is lacking. And in fact, I think it's almost like it's not just that people aren't teaching us these things. I think it's even worse than that. It's in fact that people are teaching us the wrong things. Because when you grow up with siblings, and you grow up with friends, and you grow up with your family, generally what I find is that your surrounding environment, the people that you're growing up around, they are not familiar with the principles of psychological mastery. they haven't mastered that psychology within themselves, and they set a very poor demonstration for you when you're growing up as to how all this stuff works. So what I find is that as you're growing up, you get conditioned with a lot of bad habits, a lot of bad patterns. One example is worrying all the time. Another example is being very critical and judgmental of other people and also yourself. Other example is various limiting beliefs that people grow up with. Limiting beliefs, a lot of them revolve around money. Limiting beliefs about what you're capable of and what you deserve in life. Limiting beliefs about how good you feel you are innately, how lovable you feel you are, what you feel you need to do in order to be loved and feel loved. So I think there is a lot there that we get conditioned with that is negative and that's flat out false and just not true as far as your psychology is concerned. And so not only do you not get a manual, it's like you get a manual that teaches you the opposite of what you should be knowing and should be learning. It's like you were trying to learn how to fly that helicopter, and not only didn't you have a manual, I handed you a manual. I said, look, this is the manual for flying a helicopter. And in that manual, I specifically, deliberately put in the wrong things. How hard would your life be then? It would be twice as hard. And that's kind of how it is with us humans, especially if you were not very privileged to grow up in a kind of an enlightened family that was studying this stuff and that's more aware. So it kind of depends on your circumstances. But I feel like most people growing up just don't have the luxury of having good role models. And so unless you are immersed in personal development literature and you really go on this journey of figuring out how this stuff works and what the real truth is about some of these limiting beliefs and how psychology really works on a practical level, not a theoretical level, then it's really hard to be fulfilled with life because you get caught up in traps. You get caught up in the trap of seeking external validation. You get caught up in the trap of that hamster wheel of keeping up with the Joneses, trying to get material things, thinking that they're going to make you happy when they don't. So trying to like one up your neighbors, one up your friends, and then only later in life realizing that that doesn't work. Then you can get caught in the trap of success. So being successful with your business or being successful in your career and just going after the money because you think the money will eventually lead you somewhere nice and pleasant, and you end up realizing that that often ends up being a big letdown. And just all sorts of themes like this, just I can rattle off lists and lists of them. So what ends up happening is that you fall into these traps because you haven't been given good examples and you're just kind of going along and you don't know any better. You haven't really studied this stuff. And so I think that's what I mean by personal development, is that we want to give you psychological self-mastery on a practical level, not a theoretical level. That means what I want for you is I want for you to be able to manage your expectations. I want you to be able to manage your negative emotions. I want you to be able to create beliefs in yourself that are going to make you really empowered and are going to allow you to go out there and be really successful and get whatever you want in your life. And I want you to be able to set goals properly and understand how to do that. I want you to understand how relationships really work and how to get a lot of enjoyment out of your relationships while taking out all the frustration of relationships, which are so common. And I want you to understand the importance of fitness and nutrition, which again, often for those two things, fitness, nutrition, and also exercise, those we oftentimes get set with bad examples for those as well from our parents and siblings and just the media in general. So all of these things I want you to understand on a deep psychological level, and I want you to develop mastery of them so that you can do with your mind what that 14-year-old kid on YouTube can do with a helicopter. That guy who's practiced flying that helicopter for all of his life, and he can now do barrel rolls and fly it backwards and upside down and do all sorts of tricks and maneuvers. I want you to be able to do that with yourself. And think of the equivalent. If you could do that with your body, who would you be? You would be like an Olympic gymnast, right? If you could do that with a body, you would be an athlete. If you could do those kind of acrobatic maneuvers. But what if you could do that with your mind? What if you could do backflips with your mind? What if you could do barrel rolls with your mind? What does that mean? Well, I think to me that is the ultimate vision of why I do personal development, is in the hope that I can reach that point after a while. is that I can develop this sort of proficiency in my own psychology. I can master myself so well. I can master my own emotions. I can master my own thoughts. I can master basically my body through my mind, that I am able to accomplish amazing things. I can get anything that I want in life. I can make myself feel good by getting the things that I want. I can get those two things to align and match up, which few people are able to do. And I'm able to manage my relationships, my health, and basically I'm able to get the most out of this mind-body combination that I was born with. And I'm able to create the most awesome life that's possible for me. And then I'm able to die with no regrets, knowing that I gave it my all, I figured it out, I mastered myself, and I accomplished a lot. And in the process, doing all of that, I'm able to contribute to society, and I'm able to put smiles on people's faces, because when I master my mind, and I master my body, and I master my life, that puts me suddenly in a position to be able to go out and help others do the same with their lives. And for me, that's really easy because I'm in personal development, so that's a direct application. For you, you can also do that because when you're going to be good at your career, you're going to be able to go out there and contribute and help others. And that's what I ultimately want for all of us to be doing. So if you're a doctor, you can be a better doctor. If you're a lawyer, you can be a better lawyer. If you're an engineer, you can be a better engineer. If you're a teacher, you can be a better teacher. If you're a businessman, you can be a better businessman. Whatever your passion is in life, in order to really live into that passion, I think there are things you need to master about yourself. And that all starts with the psychology, right? You want to develop a manual. And what I want for you is I want for you to develop a manual for yourself. I want you to teach yourself how to master your own psychology. And that manual, I think there's two elements to it. One is that we are all very similar because we have the same genetic makeup and we're all human beings. We're all part of the same species. Some of us are very similar in personality type. Some of us have the same values. So in that sense, we have very similar psychologies. And in that sense, whatever works for one person tends to work across the board, right? One example of this is, for example, we've just been biologically, through evolution, we have hard wiring that makes us appreciate nature, for example. It's very hard to find a human being. I challenge you to find a human being across the planet who is not going to feel some emotional connection when they go out and see something beautiful in nature, like an amazing sunset or the Grand Canyon or something like that. And you know why that is? That's because we grew up in those environments and we have neural wiring for that. We would much rather be out looking at the Grand Canyon than we would sitting in a sterile white room, right? Because that's more natural, that's our natural environment, and that's part of our psychology. And understanding that is important, right? Because maybe right now you are sitting in a cubicle and you're feeling like your life is not quite as fulfilling as it could be. And maybe the reason that is because you're just not going outside enough and you're not connecting with nature enough, which is where you grow up. You grow up in a natural environment, not in a cubicle. So maybe that's one example, right? And I think that there's many examples, and that's the reason that personal development can work, and that's the reason that we have these principles of success and principles of fulfillment, because for many people, I can give you a principle that's going to apply almost to everyone, which is going to be important for fulfillment. And if you're breaking that principle and you don't even realize it, then you're going to be frustrated because you're going to be wondering, why am I not fulfilled? And the reason you're not fulfilled is because you're breaking these principles and you're not following certain other principles. So there's that. I want you to learn these principles and I want you to master them and apply them and build habits around them. But then I also, of course, want you to personalize this to you, because even though you are a human being and we're all very similar, and you could say we're all the same on some level, you can also say we're very different on another level, because we all are also unique. And there's nobody out there that's quite like you, nobody out there that quite has the same experiences as you, quite has the same programming that you've had growing up, right? And even biologically, you have differences. You have different races, you have different personality types, you have introverts and extroverts, and you have people with different happiness set points, and you have people with different diseases and conditions and psychological makeups. And then, of course, on top of that, you're adding layers of conditioning that you get through through childhood, and then through adolescence, and then through early adulthood. So you've got all those factors which make you very unique. And that means that certain things are not going to work for you quite the same way as they do for other people. And then, of course, you have your own intentions that you're throwing in on top of that. You have your own preferences, you have your own goals, you have your own situation, you have your own life going on, and your life is different than everybody else's out there. So when you're creating this manual for flying your metaphorical helicopter and doing backflips, what you got to take into account is that it is a helicopter, but then, so you're going to go in there and you're going to fill in some of the basics. All helicopters work in the same way. But then also you're going to put in your own twist on this stuff. You're going to take your own psychology and you're going to take your own values and you're going to see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And you're basically going to go in there and write this manual yourself. And my job is to help you figure out what you need to put into the manual and figure that out for yourself, because I don't want to write the manual for you. That would be wrong. I can't do that because I'm not you. The only one that can write the manual is you. I can just help you look and see, do you have the right things in the manual that you need? And in fact, I think my biggest role is not even telling you these things. I think my biggest role is just inspiring you with this grand idea to go out there and write this manual. This is something that's important, because if someone doesn't tell you to do this, it takes a while to figure it out on your own. You kind of have to really stumble upon it. And some people never figure it out. They end up wasting all their years in their life, struggling and being frustrated through all this stuff, and then dying full of regrets, not even realizing that they never had a manual or that they could write their own manual. Or a lot of people go through their life using the manual of their friends or their parents, which ends up being wrong for them. Or they could grab a manual from some book or some website or some seminar and just try to copy it wholesale and just steal that manual and use it, and then find out that that's not giving them the results they want either. And so it just leads to a lot of frustration. What I want to really end on here is this vision, because what I got excited about when I thought about this helicopter analogy is how cool would it be to be able to do the analog of doing those amazing backflips and having that mastery of control of this machine. And I thought, well, the only thing cooler than like that is being able to do it with your mind. It's so awesome to see athletes do that with their bodies. When you're watching the Olympics or you're watching some playoff in the NFL or the NBA, or when you're watching a gymnast do his thing and be really awesome, that's cool to see with the body. But I think that not all of us care so much about being athletic in that way, but I think all of us want to be more athletic and nimble inside our minds, because we are there. You can't run away from yourself. You can't really escape yourself. So this is something that you're going to be stuck with whether even you want to or not. The question is, do you want to be mediocre of a mental athlete, or do you really want to master yourself, master your mind, and think about all the awesomeness that could lead to? Think of the peak experiences that you could have when you really master your own psychology, when you really understand it, and how you could contribute to the world, the kind of feelings you can get from being both successful, but then really figuring out the fulfillment part. Because for me, the fulfillment is what's important. There's so many people out there that are successful, but then don't have the happiness, don't have the feelings with it that they want, or they feel like they're not excited about life, like they're bored with life, even though they've made millions of dollars and they've started a bunch of businesses and they've contributed to a bunch of charities, they still feel empty. So for me, figuring out how to connect those two together is the Holy Grail. And for me, the Holy Grail is that picture of doing those acrobatics in the air, but you're not doing it with a remote control helicopter, you're doing it with your life. That to me is why I do personal development, and I hope you're on board with that vision. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you like this, leave your comments down below, share it, like it, link to it. I really want to spread this message around. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you think about this and what you want to add on to it. So go ahead, share it, and I look forward to talking to you soon.